Hey everyone, I am actually re-recording this battle report because the last one went for like 50 minutes because I rambled and I decided that that is shit. So we're going to shorten it up hopefully for this one. I've got my round 4 game of Cancon and this time I was up against Angus's VC. The deployment was counter thrust. Yep. And the secondary was hold the center. So it wasn't a great secondary for me, particularly not against a list like this. So he had 2 vampire counts. One of them was an occultism master, one of them's an evoc master. He had a barracking BSB, he had a big block of ghouls, a small block of ghouls, a small block of skellies, 3 units of bat swarms, some barrow guard, some spectral hunters, some wraiths, and 2 units of vamp knights. Basically, I think this list isn't a great matchup for me. I went into it in my list review in terms of what I think of this list, and I think I sort of underrated it a bit. But essentially, because he's got as he did in our game at least, and I think he does in most games, he had the general and the BSB and the barrow guard, which makes them static 6, and he had the other bloke in the ghouls. So essentially he has 2 stubborn blocks, he's reducing the crumble with his BSB aura, and even if you kill the rest of his list, you get like 1400 points, because he's got all his points in those 2 really tough blocks. Probably more than 1400 points, what's that? Like 300, 600, 1000, maybe about 17 or 800 points. So basically, I think that it's a tough matchup for me because ghouls are tough when you don't have armor. So, while I'd be happy with my Chariot characters fighting them, well, I probably wouldn't because my Shamanism guy doesn't like poison. I was thinking back to when I used to have 1 rollable BSB in the unit. Yeah, so realistically, my Beast Lord's the only one who loves fighting them. Or the Mongrels, I guess, because the Mongrels don't care as much because they're not that valuable themselves. If I had some armor, they wouldn't be as troublesome, but the way it is, they're a bit of an issue for me. Particularly because even if I decide, alright, I'm going to run my Chariots 1 wide and I'm going to have one of the wizards out of the unit or something, and send my Beast Lord in, I just don't have the output to deal with them, so they're going to be, they're quite hard, basically, to deal with, because they got so many wounds, they're stubborn, and I don't have the armor to survive with most of my units. Barrow Guard's similarly troublesome, just because, maybe if I got a Gortach or 2 in there, we'd be okay. I'd probably start trying to eat characters if I did. But I just don't have the output unless I can get a good combo charge on them to really take them off. So assuming that Angus plays safe or not even necessarily safe, well enough that I can't just gangbang either of those units, it would be a tough job for me to pull them off. And Vampire Knights are troublesome. Sorry, excuse me. Probably even for the the Chariots wouldn't like to be charged by them because the Beast Lord, if I got a bit unlucky, could probably die. Gortach wouldn't mind it, but he's taking a lot of wounds, so it's probably not the best thing for him anyway. So Vampire Knights could be troublesome just because they're the fastest part of Angus's list and they have a really good output, and my Beast Giants do nothing to them. But realistically, my main problems here were the fact that I needed to somehow compete and hold the center against a list that has 2 blocks that were going to be hard for me to touch. I've split up. So for my day 2, I was taking 2 pictures of each side of one of each side of the table. So it's a little bit closer in, but the lighting's pretty bad on this one. So my opponent won the roll for sides, and he chose the side that it makes obvious sense, basically, because there's this big piece of impassable in the middle, and the center objective is just there, where I've got the little token. So basically it makes it much harder for me to move up and try and get it, whereas he's got an easy open field. So given the fact that he already had the advantage with the style of his list in this secondary, it wasn't great to be stuck on the bad side of the board, basically. I did something with my Wildhorns, though. This is them here. They're too wide, which was like the move that I was happiest with in the tournament. Because basically, they don't want to fight anything particularly anyway. So these guys didn't ambush, because there's not much of a backfield for them to ambush into anyway, in terms of like vulnerable units or a bunker or anything. So I was sort of trying and hoping that I could draw the secondary. I thought it was unlikely I was going to win it, but I might be able to, if I played well enough, draw the secondary. And a really important part of that, I've got the mongrels on the other side of the building, but a really important part was these guys being too wide, within 6 of the objective, without passing the threshold of the building. So that top line of the building is like further north than their frontage, and that meant that my chariots on the other side could basically also be in front of the Wildhorns, and it was going to make it essentially impossible for him to charge them with anything other than like bats. So the plan there is basically I can get those guys in a safe position where they are giving me like 1 scoring unit within 6 of the objective every turn that I need them there. So yeah, basically, that was sort of, if I didn't have the ability to do this, I would have found it a lot more difficult to have a chance at the secondary. But in doing this and being able to keep my mongrels on the other side, within 12 inches of my general to have leadership 9, basically I gave myself pretty decent chances. Or like the best chance that I could get once we rolled table sides. Yeah, my giants have vanguarded up into a ruins over here. They didn't really have great targets, and it's something I'm sort of noticing about them. And I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering Cancon, and it's sort of more about more recent games that I'm playing. But I find that they're like about 50% of the armies I play have, at least on their flanks, like 2-up armor save units. And there's just so often a time where those giants are sitting around going like, well, there's really nothing I can contribute here. So I'm not too happy with them, despite the fact that I loved them when I first started using them. In terms of Angus's deployment, he's got a unit of 4 Vamp Knights back here, some Bat Swarms, the Barrow Guard with the General and BSB, Wraiths, Skeletons and Ghouls in a lineup over here. Bugger off, Norton. And then the big... What did I just say? The big unit of Ghouls with his other vampire count over here. And then if we go to the next picture, he has Spectral Hunters on the hill, his other Vamp Knights over here, and his other chaff. This is actually after my magic phase, this picture. But I have my mongrels set up over here. Again, they're hoping to contest the objective and sticking close to the building to stay within 12 of my general. My Gortachs are basically just manning that side, because I figure if the Gortachs get charged by the Vampire Knights, it's not great, but given the rest of the things that are over there, I think I probably win that one. And protecting the mongrels, because they're 500 points and crucial for the objective, is pretty important. I've also got chaff over there because I figured I might need it at some point against the knights, because they with Swift Stride they outspeed me basically. That's basically it. Oh, I do have a totem beast up here. He got on in my magic phase. I think I got lucky with that one. I think maybe Angus tried to dispel it. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I can't think of anything else that would have been that important from just dispels. Maybe he just wasn't able to stop that one. He ended up killing a unit of Bat Swarms and then overrunning into the rear of the Spectral Hunters and dealing with them. So this is, I think, my turn 2. So these Bat Swarms over here they were summoned by my opponent, I'm pretty sure, and blocked my Chariot Star. I did charge them knowing that I could get my Gargoyles over to chaff if I needed. However, the Gargoyles failed their March test, so I had to sacrifice a Giant instead, as you can see him up here. Yeah, so they're sort of in a position now where they're threatening a lot of things. They can't be seen by the ghouls. And they're protecting those Wildhorns. So I pushed my Mongrels up. And there are two crucial moments in the game, in my opinion. And this is one of them. So I figured if the ghouls... If I don't move up aggressively-ish like this, my opponent can probably chaff my... At least with his block here, he can probably chaff my Chariots. If he chaffs my Chariots, these ghouls are able to just sort of march up, keep everything in their front, and not really worry about it, and probably keep my Mongrels out of the objective. Yeah, I think so. So, this is basically a risky play. I think I gave him an 8 or a 9 on the dice, not Swift Stride, as the charge. I'm pretty sure I tried to give them Savage Fury, but failed. Because I failed 2 dice casting Savage Fury or the Hereditary more times than I'd like to remember in this tournament. But this is one of them, I'm pretty sure. I did give them +1 strength. And basically figuring, if the ghouls charge my Mongrels, I strike at the same time as the unit. And I think, presuming I pass Primal Fury, and hopefully Fear, but Fear less important than Primal Fury. If I pass it, I should... I think I'm in a decent position to actually still win there. I hadn't done the maths before the game, and there's a lot of variables in the fact that Fear could be failed, although if I'd gotten my spell off the Savage Fury, it would have been fine. Primal could be failed, and obviously dice can just happen. But doing the maths post-game, I can't remember the exact numbers, but the result was based... Something like the Mongrels do 14 wounds and the ghouls with the character do 12, I think. So they have a charge and Von Karnstein to take them to 14, and I have a banner to take me to 15. And that is assuming passing Leadership 8 Fear, passing Primal Fury, and that is considering the fact that they've got the +1 strength and the banner to take them to strength 5. My opponent took that charge and made it. And essentially what I was thinking was, if he gets in there, you know, it's a very swingy combat, and obviously shit can happen either way. But slightly favours me, I think. And assuming that works out and I hold, those 2 Gortachs are going to go in, and I'm going to almost certainly take the ghouls, because they'd have to reform wider to probably about here-ish, so probably like 4 or 5 models extra on the end to keep this guy in the front. I've got chaff to stop the knights coming in and supporting. And then after I do my, like, you know, the average was, I'm pretty sure, 14 wounds, he's got 21 ghouls left. The only buff that he could give them was rerolls to wound because of the short range on the occultism spells. So basically he'd have 21 left, and I'd have 2d3 impact hits, I'd have 6 attacks, probably reroll under hit with Battle Focus, and then I'd have 2 Thunderstomps on top of my unit's attacks. So I think it's a very, very likely outcome that I just kill his ghouls, either in that phase or in the next combat phase. And the next combat phase would be even better because it would give me pivots. So obviously it's risky, and then when you've got a close combat like that, anything can happen. In this case, it didn't work out, and I think he did like 19 wounds, and I did 10 or something, so he just auto-broke me in. That wasn't good. He overran and he got out of line of sight. I should have angled these guys more intelligently, knowing that he could break me and he could get out of my line of sight. I should have just... I don't really know why they're facing where they are. I should have faced them more towards the Mongrels. I could have still kept, basically, the line so that if he didn't charge whatever, I'm not charge blocked in case there's any opportunities. But I should have angled that, at the very least, the inside Gortach differently, in case the Mongrels did flee and he did pursue them to get out of their line of sight. I think he failed his restrain test. He failed a lot of march tests and a lot of restrain... maybe not a lot of restrain tests, but he failed a lot of march tests and he failed that restrain test. in this game, which was funny for an army that's like Leadership 9 in BSB range and stuff. I guess those guys weren't in BSB range, but whatever. So he wanted to restrain, but he couldn't. So he did run them down, though, and that wasn't really what I was hoping for there. Lost 500 points, but at least it kept his ghouls out of the objective. So yeah, over here on the right, like not that much is happening. My giant ended up dying because he got charged by the knights, fled from them. They didn't pursue him. Then he didn't rally and he died to the bat swarms that are chaffing me. So my plan here, I think it actually comes up next, so I might as well just go to that. But we'll come back to that. Basically over here, as you can see, he got through, and that's not what I wanted. But I'm able to... this is actually after my next turn. So these pitches were on my opponent's turn. Turn 2, I think. And this pitch is on my turn. After my turn. So basically, Chariots charged the bat swarms. They overran into the skeletons because I knew that my Gargoyles could go there, chaff his knights from coming into countercharge. And because my Chariots being there kept the barrier guard in the front, they wouldn't be able to charge me either. This meant that basically I'm doing a pretty good job on the objective. Because I think I'm up. Or maybe no, I don't think I'm up yet. But this is my turn. I charged. And this is the end of my turn, so I'm expecting to kill all these skeletons by the end of my opponent's turn, which means that he would need to somehow get something within 6 inches of the objective to stop me from getting 1 point. These ghouls are facing off this way because of the totem beast, which is now dead. So basically, I'm going to get 1 point by doing this move. Sorry, excuse me. Importantly, over on the left-hand side, this Gortach failed his march check, which was kind of important, to be honest, because if I could get him a couple of inches over further to the right there, or towards the house, my opponent would be stuck where he has to give one of them a flank, basically. The only position I could get to was there, which meant that he could reform 6 wide and keep them both in the front, which is still okay because he loses that extra rank of attacks. But if I didn't fail the march test, I would have had him in a really tough position, basically. Okay, so a few things have sort of happened here where this is on my turn. This is after those knights charged my chaff and I think failed their restraint test. Didn't catch the Gargoyles. Basically, we sort of had a discussion where we were both like, look, I don't know what we are. I was on 16, 27, 37 points. I think he was a little bit above me. But the guy on top, well, the top 2 guys at least, were really far ahead. And basically sort of like a 10-10 doesn't really help either of us all that much. So we sort of just agreed that it's maybe the time for me to take a risk, because if I don't, he's going to win the objective. We're going to roughly draw on points, probably. And that's just going to be a loss to me, because he's going to have enough to just march into that zone. I'd have to sort of move back because of the knights, and I'd just pretty much just be in trouble. So what I did here was I said, fuck it. If I have to fight your barrier guard unit with my chariots, I don't love it, because you've got all the static res, but I'll do it. Sorry, excuse me. I also charged the giant in, mainly because he had like an 8, I think, overrun, 8 or a 9 overrun, and if he got into the barrier guard, like happy days, they can't charge me. So I'd lose the giant, obviously, but don't really care as much as not getting charged by the barrier guard. And maybe I would have charged them in my turn. Maybe I would have like had a look and seen what options were available to me at the time. Also importantly, I kept my giant like sort of, this is a 4-wide unit, and I wanted him to engage all of them, even though he could have just engaged 3, because that shortened the overrun. And it also meant that my Oh no, casualty removal wouldn't have mattered. He would have always had to keep that guy, no matter what. Anyway, this is not a move I think I would make in a team tournament. This is a move I made because I didn't think 7 points really helped me to be relevant in the event. I was pretty confident that no matter what happened, I wasn't going to win. But with sort of a podium still in sight, 7 points probably takes me out of that contention. So I don't think it was the best move. I should have just played conservative and kept back if I wanted to get, you know, most likely get my best score. But I decided to take this risk that I think is bad because it was, in the context of the tournament, probably worth it. Over here, my Gortach got into his ghouls, and basically the plan was for me to snipe his character, which I did successfully. I rolled I got 5 hits from the Gortach on the right there. He actually failed his Primal Fury, but still got the 5 hits, which is, I think, probably 1 better than average. And then I rolled 4 sixes to wound. But with good saves, he actually managed to save, I think, 3 of the 6s, and then didn't save my other wound. So I had 1 wound, and I needed to roll a 3+ to kill him with the D3 wounds, and I did. The average there is actually that the Gortach does 2.5 wounds, assuming he passes Primal Fury, that is. So, kind of interesting that, like, it's basically a 50-50 whether I kill him. But I did, so it's all good, and that's sort of half the time my plan with Gortach is just get them in somewhere and kill a character that's more valuable and then enjoy life. I don't have a picture of it, but basically after this combat, you're engaging 4. I turned my Gortach on the left to engage, I think, all of the models, or maybe 5 of the front 6, by giving them his flank, because I took 4 wounds, I think, on both Gortachs. And what I was then able to do with the Gortach on the right was shift him further over so that he's just corner clipping rather than contacting 2, because this guy's now engaged them. And then in that position, it meant that basically his reform was never going to be able to be maximize very well on this other Gortach. Knowing that I was probably going to lose this one, I needed to keep this guy alive. And the space between, like, for the building and not being able to come within 1 inch of it was really helping me out there, because it meant that I think until he was 1 wide, he couldn't maximize on that Gortach. So the end result over there was basically that I lost this Gortach, and then the other Gortach ended the game with 4 wounds, but the unit of ghouls was dead. So this Gortach was the survivor of eating the vampire count and the whole ghoul unit, which is, I think, honestly, what, 500, 600? It's almost maybe a slight points win for me, but not very much. It's pretty close to a trade, particularly because I had to sacrifice these Gargoyles at that point to stop Knights coming into countercharge. I think basically overall on the left flank was just a push for points. So the Mongrel situation didn't work out, but the left-hand side of the board was okay in the end anyway. What else have we got? This is... okay. So this is basically like the last picture I've got. Yeah. We only got to turn 5 in this game. And so Angus marched his Knights to get within 6 of the objective rather than trying to kill the Gortach. And this is actually my Chariot characters fighting the Barragard for the second combat phase, but they were not consecutive. So I think I again failed my Savage Fury on 2 dice, and I got off +1 strength on them, and like nothing else probably. But I made a mistake with the positions of my characters. He's got his general on the right corner, and his BSB somewhere in here. And worried about the Potion of Strength on his BSB, I put my Beast Lord on the right-hand side to fight his Vamp count, which isn't really great for me, because if I can just tank the Vamp counts attacks with my Shaman, which, like, I'm very good at doing, given that I've got Scarification up and the rerolls to wound, and his strength doesn't even matter. However, the first round of combat, I didn't have that. He did like 3 wounds to my Beast Lord. I didn't kill him with my attacks. I rolled really poorly on my attacks. I did like 1 wound total to his entire unit. And essentially, after the first round, I auto-broke. So we had a dice off. We were both Swift Stride. I rolled a 6, and then he rolled a 4. So I managed to get away, but that was pretty lucky. And the second round of combat, which is this one, I've still got +1 strength off, and I think that's the only relevant buff. I had to take a fear test, so whatever that is, I think that's just Scarification. And I have the Oaken Throne, maybe still from the previous turn, I don't know. But I positioned my characters different, so that my Wizard now was going to be in contact with his General if he came through. Which meant that basically they ended up in a duel. I got a bit lucky, but I almost killed his count in the duel. And then my Beast Lord, with his 4 attacks, hitting on 3s on the BSB, wounding on 2s, rerolling, and rerolling to hit as well, and Divine, managed to kill the guy. He only had a 5-up ward save, but I feel like the average is probably that he should be alive on 1 wound. But it didn't matter. I slotted him. I didn't take many other wounds. I've got some wound markers on me, but I think that's from previous rounds. He did get half points for my General from this combat. But the second round of combat, I actually won it. So it went from being auto-broken with the same buffs up to winning the combat. And essentially the big difference was I didn't fluff my attacks, and I had my Wizard in the position that he should have always been, which is taking up the Count's attention. So, got the points for the BSB from that, which was essentially a 2,500 point turnaround. Like, he didn't catch me. I rallied. And then I got 500 points when he charged me again from the BSB. So, rather than losing my 2,000 points, I gained 500-ish. I did get half points for my General, so, like, I guess like a 2,200 point turnaround, near enough. Which was obviously pretty lucky for me there. But I think, in terms of the overall context of the game, I thought it was okay. Like, I didn't feel too guilty about them getting away, basically, because if the Mongrels held, and I just slapped his ghouls silly when the Gortach countercharged in there, I don't need to take that risk on the right-hand side, basically. So, I'd be up, rather than trading 1,000 points for 1,000 points, I'd be up 1,000 points. I'd actually have a real shot at getting the objective. And then knowing that I still had the chaff over there and the knights aren't all that fast, I could have had Gortach bearing down on the side of his units as well. And it would have been a very different game, I think, had that Mongrel combat gone differently. I can't be dirty about it not, because like it's like a coin flip. But for instance, if I was in Angus's position, I don't think I would have made that charge, because I would have been like, feels like a way to lose my ghouls and my vampire count. So I'm not unhappy that I took the risk with those mongrels and pushed them forward. It just didn't work out. And that meant that, you know, getting that little bit of luck at the end of the game by my chariots not being caught in the dice off was like, okay, like, sort of fair play. Particularly because with the result of that second round of combat, I think it's not a terrible combat for me to be in, basically, because, I mean, if you think about this combat continuing, the Count and the Shaman are just going to keep slapping each other, and I'm just going to farm wounds off these Strength 4 guys over here. There's probably a much more significant chance that, given that I can get wounds back with Druidism, it's probably not enough time in the game, but there's much more significant chance, I think, that I kill with my Wizard his General than that he kills me. And 3 or 4 turns of combat, I probably am able to grind down that unit of Barragard. He's only got 1 raise, after all. And because if his General isn't doing wounds, he's also not able to get wounds back with the True Thirst. So I think probably there wasn't really a great opportunity for me to charge him. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there wasn't really an easy chance for me to get that earlier or anything. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, so like it was a very interesting game, and there were a lot of things that could have gone either way, I think. So I reckon this could have been a big win to me, but it also, obviously, if he just caught my unit, would have been a big win to him, because we still would have drawn objective in the end, but he would have gotten like 2,000 more points, so it was 11-9 on points in the end with the drawn objective. That would probably take it to like a 14-6 to him, if my memory of the victory points table is correct. So yeah, there's just a lot of things that could have gone either way. But I think I think the more sensible thing to do would have been if those chariots just didn't press, because realistically that means that he probably wins like 13-7 overall, because he ends up winning the objective. We knew that we weren't going to get 6 turns, but if we knew that we would get it, like if we were in good time, I probably wouldn't have charged when I did with those chariots. And that might have changed a few things. Yeah, basically there are a few different ways that the game could have gone, I think. So it was very close. I was pretty happy to get 11 on what I think is probably not a great matchup for my list. It's not terrible, because I've got a massive mobility advantage over him. But bad objective in the matchup for me, and I got the bad deployment side based off it. But the move I'm happiest with in the tournament is these 2 wide Wildhorns, because they just stuck there all game, contesting the objective for me. Yeah, so 11-9 win to me, which means that basically I've had 1 big win and then 3 really close games. Takes me to 48 points. And I think that was good for like 6th or something. 6th or 7th. And I think I needed a big result to get on. It was looking like I'd probably need a big result to get on the podium, basically. I can't think of how other games went. I know how the tournament ended up, but yeah, I think I needed something pretty significant, because there was like a big log jam. There was like one player really far ahead, and there was a big log jam everywhere else. But that's that. Thanks for sticking around. I'll have one more game for you guys at some point in the future when I can record it. Alright, thanks.